Hello, hello. Welcome, beautiful, to today's Thursday Talk. I'm sorry I've missed a couple Thursday Talks, but I'm super excited to have you back. Today we are talking about digital storage, what you need to know. And as you know, this is Thursday Talks with me, Suzanna Kaye. I want to say hi really quickly we've got Thomas is here, and he just popped in really quickly. And Sue's here from Northeast Texas. Welcome, Sue. Good to see you. And Susan from Jersey. Great to have you. Jane and Susan. Yes, we started just a minute late. So sorry about that. Trish says, I'm hoping this is the email and digital course. This is not the webinar. That's tonight at 6 p.m. But we are talking about digital files and storing digital files because this is part of the organizing series. So we will talk about digital files, but it's not the full webinar. That would be tonight. And if you've already registered for the full webinar tonight, then check your email because that's where that login will be. Let's see. Hey, Linda. Oh, yes, you got the Queen's Jubilee over in the UK, 70 years. So she's got a 4-day holiday. That's awesome. Love it. Enjoy that. Hey, Alyssa and Sandy. And I can't say hi to everybody, but I'm so excited that you're all here. And yes, thank you, Wendy. I'm so glad to be back too. This is my first full day back. And while, I'm not 100% up and running yet, I'm still a little on the tired side. It's so nice to be back, let me tell you. Lynn's here on the go, taking us shopping with her. That's awesome. And remember that there is a podcast of the Thursday Talks also. If you're ever on the run, it's not live. The podcast is not live, but you can watch it after the fact and listen to replays that way. So like I mentioned, today we're talking about digital storage, what you need to know. This is part 1 of the Organizing and Decisions series. There are 5 parts called Where to Store Things. So the first things that we're talking about where to store are our digital files. And the reason we're talking about those today is because tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, we have the webinar, Emails and Digital File Organizing. And there will be a replay available afterwards if you can't join us tonight at 6. But if you've not yet registered, make sure hop over to suzannakaye.com and click on the store link. And then you can register for that webinar. If you register before the webinar, then you will be saving $5. Once the webinar has gone live, then you can still get the replay in the store for another month, but it will be $5 more expensive. So hopefully that helps. And I hope to see you there at the webinar tonight. Let me know in the comments if you've already registered. It should be a really good one. All right. So really quickly, Susan's here from Wisconsin. Their seasons are all crazy, I guess. She says, I'm not sure which season we're in. And hey, Ellen, good to see ya. Okay, so with digital storage, I picked digital storage as one of the where to store things parts for the Organizing and Decision series because so many people get confused about what the options are for storing digitally, the pros and cons about those different types of storage, how to remember what you stored where, and how to find it again. So I just figured let's go over digital file storage and how to where to store things and how to make those decisions. Now in the webinar tonight, I'll be much more in depth about folder structures, and we cover the email inbox and managing emails as well as additional digital filing information. So the webinar will be much more in depth, but this will give you a really good taste to help you get started on your digital file storage or make some changes or make sure that your digital file storage is up and running how you want it, because there are some things that you might not know that we'll cover today. All right. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about really quickly, just to go over it, is the types of digital file storage. So where can you store digital files? What are the different types? What's the difference between them? First off, there are local hard drives. So basically a local hard drive is anything that's physically in your location that you can kind of touch, feel, hold. So that would include things like a USB drive, or some people call it a flash drive or a thumb drive. That's a type of a local hard drive. An external hard drive. This is one that you would plug into your computer and store information on it, and you can unplug it when you're not using it. Or there's the hard drive that's on your computer. So your laptop has a hard drive inside of it. Your desktop computer has a hard drive inside of it. Those are the 3 types of the local hard drives. So those would be stored at your location. Usually you have access to them and only you have access to them. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Then there's cloud storage. So cloud storage, basically cloud storage is any type of digital file storage that is stored not in your home. So it's on a server, somebody else's hard drive in a different location, and it uses the internet to get information back and forth from that server. So that's what cloud is. It's kind of like your files go up into the cloud and then go over to a different server through the internet. So that's cloud storage. So you might have heard of things like Google Drive, Dropbox, iCloud. Those are all cloud storage providers. So if you're storing something on Dropbox, Google Drive, iCloud, then usually you are storing that through the cloud. That means that you're storing it on their servers. So those are the different types of storage devices. Those are the general ones that we use these days. Of course, back in the day, we had floppy disks and we had CDs, DVDs. We had a bunch of different random ones that came up for a short amount of time and left. So there are older types of local drive storage, but these are the ones that we use the most often these days. All right. So if you're enjoying this, please make sure to share this video, copy the share link, and then post it in your social media or send it to a friend. It always helps me if you share these. So really quickly, before we go on to point number 2, I want to say hi. We got Mary's here. Hi, Mary. Wendy is already registered for the webinar tonight. Yay. I'm so excited. Look forward to seeing you. And so is Sue. Yay. Oh, Jana says hi. Good to see you back. Oh, it's so good to be back. Thank you. Dorothy's registered for the webinar. Awesome. And so is Susan. She says, registered and looking forward to tonight's webinar. And we have someone here from Ohio who says hello. Welcome, welcome. All right, so we just talked about the different types of digital storage, the different USB drives, cloud, all of that. How do you decide where to store your files? Well, let's look at these different types really quickly. We'll talk about various things today, but let's look at these types really quickly and talk about the pros and cons to help you decide what types of files to store where. So first off, cloud storage. Cloud storage is usually the one that most people are afraid of because it does require an internet connection. So in order to store on the cloud, you can usually, with a lot of these services, you don't have to be connected to the internet necessarily to work with the files, but to have them updated in the file storage locations, such as Google Drive, to have that updated where it's stored, then you would need the internet connection. So a lot of these, you can work on some files that you have without the internet connection, but in order to update that kind of that backup of that file, then you do need an internet connection. Some of them, you always need an internet connection. It all depends on the setup. Then also they are stored on a third-party server, which means they're not stored in your house. You don't have control over the hardware that they're stored on. So that's another thing that makes people nervous. So since it requires the internet and since it's stored on somebody else's hardware, that gives us less control, right? With the internet, we can be worried about hackers trying to get our information through the internet connection. And we can be worried about the hardware. You know, if the third-party company decides, you know, if their hardware breaks down or if they decide to discontinue service, then that can be a concern. It's not a huge concern. That latter of the two, usually they have what's called redundancy. So one of the great things about cloud storage, you are much less likely to lose any of your data using cloud storage. So redundancy means if they had a drive that they're storing your files on through the internet, not only do they have one drive, but they have multiple drives. You know, imagine like 4 or 5 different drives in different locations. And they all store a backup copy of your information on them. So that way, if there was a tornado that destroyed one of the drives, that's okay. It's on 4 or however many other drives. So you won't lose your data. If they had any type of hardware problem at all, then they have additional copies of your data. So you never lose access to your data. They just flip it over. You still have continuous access. So redundancy means that your data is more protected from any type of hardware failure or damage due to, you know, local catastrophes, anything like that. You also, with cloud storage, usually you can access it from multiple devices, which means one of the things I love about cloud storage, I can access my files from my cell phone. I can access it from any of my computers. I could use another person's computer to access my files. Wherever I'm at, if I have a device with an internet connection, usually I can access my files, which makes it super handy for a lot of the files that you might need access to often. Now, the big thing is, though, with the internet connection, you do want to be careful what you choose to store on cloud storage and which providers you use. So we will go more into that. Sorry, just making a note for myself. We will go into that more in depth in the webinar, but very broad, 30 million sky high view is for cloud storage, unless you're using a super secured third-party software like LastPass, something like that, then you probably do not want to store any extremely sensitive information such as bank statements, tax returns, social security card scans, anything like that. So Google Drive, places like that, if it's something that you need extra privacy, just to be safe, usually it's fine, but to be safe, maybe don't store it on Google Drive if you want to be extra secure, or Dropbox, or any of those general sites that are not known for extra levels of security. It's great for things that you don't need to worry about privacy. Depending on your comfort level, maybe you don't mind storing your utility bills and paid bills on there, or maybe you don't mind storing all of your career information. If you want to be extra secure and you don't want to store anything that has any personal data, maybe you just store your hobby information, research on articles, things like that. So make your best choice for you and your comfort levels. You could read their privacy policies to make sure that you know exactly how they store your data, what they do with it, and how they protect it as far as encryption. Now, the local hard drive, so your USB drive, your external drive, the drive on your computer. Now, these can be great, but that does mean that you can only access them on whatever they're plugged into, or if it's in your computer, only from that computer. So you don't have access from any device. If you're away from that storage drive or something to plug it into, then you cannot access that information. You also have to worry about the fact that hardware can fail and you only have this one. Making backups is important. If you are doing local hard drive storage only, always make sure to have extra backups. But these can easily fail. They can crash. They can have damage due to environmental effects. Sorry, my words are not coming easily today, but you know what I mean. You can lose your data a lot easier on something like your computer, USB drive, external drive. Much more likely for you to lose hardware data than for a cloud service provider too, because you don't have redundancy as much. The nice thing is there's no internet connection required. So in order to store on your hard drive, you do not need to be connected to the internet. Now, if you want higher security, make sure when you plug in your drive, like if you do want to be extra secure and have maybe an external hard drive for all of your tax returns, your bank information, scans of your social security card, that type of thing, the super extra secure items, then if you want to be extra secure before you plug this in, disconnect your internet and then plug it in. Do what you need to do. Unplug it before you connect your internet again. So that is the best way to be the most secure with using a local hard drive. So the nice thing with these, though, is that there is no internet connection required. You can use them right there, wherever you're at. So good things to store on something like your external hard drive would be some of that super private information, like your tax returns, your financials, that type of thing. Great to store on an external hard drive, the same type of thing like your Spark Life Binder. If you have your digital Spark Life Binder, an external hard drive is the perfect place to store that. A lot of times I will take a USB drive, clip it into that Spark Life Binder, the 3-ring, one of the rings, and then that way it can be stored right with my binder. Remember, with your local drives, always have a backup. So if you have one external drive, have another one in a safe deposit box at a different location. That's the best way to protect it, or have a cloud backup, which is super handy. We go much more into that in the webinar. So just a reminder, if you do want to find out even more in depth, tonight is the webinar at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and there will be a replay afterwards. So go to suzannakaye.com and click on the store link to register before the webinar starts, and it'll be $5 less expensive. You can get the replay only afterwards for $5 more for, I think, about a month. Okay, so before we go on, I want to say really quickly hello to Jana, who's hopped on, and Paula. She says that she hopes I'm feeling better. I am. Not 100% yet. Still like winded easily and probably looking a bit pale, but so much better than I was. So thank you. So really quickly, I would love to find out from you, what's your biggest fear with digital file organizing? Tell me in the comments. Let me add that to the screen actually. In the comments, let me know, what is your biggest fear when it comes to storing digital files? Are you afraid of the privacy and security and being hacked? Are you afraid that you won't be able to find the files again and you'll forget where they're stored? Are you afraid that your hard drive could crash? Are you afraid that you just don't understand it well enough and you aren't familiar enough to feel comfortable? What is your biggest fear? Let me know that in the comments because I always want to make sure to be able to speak to whatever is your biggest fears and help you out the most. All right, so Susan says her biggest fear is losing the information. Absolutely. Jane says that she's afraid that she won't be able to find it again. We'll touch a little bit on that today too, because I know that one really well. That was my biggest fear. Finding it when I want it as well, Susan says. Absolutely. Peg says, I can still remember throwing out piles of floppy drives when we no longer had floppy drives on our work computers. Right? It's amazing how fast some of these things go out of style too. So definitely, we're actually going to touch on that too. Degrading Tech. Trish says, oh, great. The email is tonight at 6. I hope I'm registered. Yeah, double check if you did not get an email from me with the login information, then that means you're probably not registered. If you're not sure, shoot me an email, hello@suzannakaye.com, and we can double check for you. Just let me know what email address you would have signed up at under. All right, so as far as fears, let's see. Kathleen says, I don't know how to pull up a specific file. Yep, so finding it again. That was my fear too, absolutely. Diane asks, why turn on or off the internet before or after using internal hard drive as you suggested? Great question. That is because when you are connected to the internet, this is not a super common thing that happens. So you don't have to be terrified of this, but when you are connected to the internet, then a really good hacker can use your internet connection to access anything on your computer or plugged into your computer. So if you have files stored on your computer, or if you have a hard drive plugged into your computer and there's a good hacker out there that decides to target you for some reason, they could use that internet connection and access all of the files on the drive that's plugged in. So to be extra secure, if you unplug your internet, disconnect it, and you don't use any internet, you just use the computer while this is plugged in, then a hacker can't because there's no internet connection to access your computer from. So great question. Love that one. Thank you. Paula says, trying to find a photo or file, so finding those things. Alyssa, good question. She says, what to put in each type of storage? Yes, that's a good one. Jana's afraid that she does not have control. Someone's afraid of losing data. Sheila says, external hard drive crash, always having a backup of your backup. Yes, I think we've all probably had something crash on us and lost some data before. I know I have. It was very expensive to recover only part of it. Trish says, keeping up with what I have and remember what is there is my biggest fear. She has so many digital things saved. Mary says, what is the reason to use digital files? To eliminate papers? Great question as well. Love that. So for digital files, there are a couple of different reasons. One of the great reasons is you can eliminate papers. That means if you have the digital scan, you can let go of the original paper. Just make sure that you have a backup or you're using the cloud storage and you don't have to worry about losing that. Much fewer file cabinet files. You can probably get down to just a file box instead of a whole cabinet. And it's such a relief. Another great part about digital files is you can have access anywhere if you're using cloud storage. So I could be off in visiting Germany, and if I'm using my super secure cloud storage, I could access my Spark Life Binder information. That's really handy. You never know when you're going to want to pull something up. Another reason is a lot of times, we're humans, we're lazy. The thought of getting up and trying to find a specific paper in our file cabinet, that's a lot harder than while you're already working on the computer and you realize you need something, just doing a quick search in your digital files and it comes up. So you don't have to go searching for the paper. It saves you a lot of energy. So those are 3 of many, I'm sure, but those are the 3 reasons that I think of off the top of my head about why to use digital files. They're also a lot easier to share. Actually, that's the 4th. They're a lot easier to share with other people. So if you wanted to make sure that your kids also have access to your digital Spark Life Binder information, then you can share it and it'll always be updated and you don't have to keep giving them new copies. That's another good reason. Diane says, what do you recommend as the safest cloud storage, if not Dropbox, etc.? I go into that much more during the webinar tonight. So I won't go into it super detailed right now, but very short answer. For me, I use LastPass and I use their secure notes area. You can't store, tons of files like you would in Dropbox or in Drive, but I like to store some of the files that I would need access to if I was traveling or if I had to access something quickly, such as my digital Spark Life Binder file, sometimes some financial files, medical information. There are certain things that I always keep in the secure notes area. And like I said, I use LastPass. That's LASTPASS. Let me see if I can, oops, not the best typing, but there you go, LastPass. And with LastPass, it's actually a password management software, but they have a much higher level of security and they do have an area for file storage. So that's my quick answer to a question that I go much more in depth into in the webinar. Hopefully that helps though. And just a reminder, if you did want to join the webinar, then suzannakaye.com, click on the store tab. And if you do it before tonight at 6 p.m., then even if you can't join us live at 6, you will get a replay and it'll cost you $5 less. And it'll only be available, I think, for another month in the store area. All right, so let's move on really quickly to topic number 3, degrading technology. So there is a term called degrading tech, and you've probably seen this in your life and you just have not really thought much about it. But there are 2 ways that all of these in the local hard drives, the things that you physically have, there are 2 ways that these often fail us. One is obsolescence. So I don't know if I even spelled that right. I did not. Pardon my spelling, but obsolescence, that means it gets outdated. So we don't have the hardware in order to retrieve the files off of it anymore, or it's just not as easy. So as I believe it might've been Pam was saying, or Peg maybe, said that she remembers throwing away all those floppy disks from work because there was no longer a floppy disk computer to access the file drives. That's obsolescence. So it was not long ago that we all use CDs and DVDs to store files. Now, these types of drives can store so much more than a CD or DVD, and this has become more common. But now computers are starting to change, so even a lot of computers don't even have the USB drives anymore, and they're starting to have their own types of things. So technology is changing so fast, the hardware is changing so fast. So one way that your technology, those digital files that you're saving, can become useless or difficult to retrieve data off of is the hardware's changed. Technology's improved. We're no longer using those. Now, the one that a lot of people don't even realize is degrading technology. So degrading tech, over time, all types of digital storage degrade, just like if it was a piece of paper, right? Over time, it starts to yellow, it becomes brittle. Depending on how you're storing it, that might happen even faster. So technology for storing digital files probably lasts shorter amount of time than a piece of paper does even. So the lifespan of each of these different types of storage depends on how you store it. So the environmental factors, was it stored in extreme heat, moisture, things like that, but also it depends on how often you add and delete files onto them. So if you only add delete files once in a great while, they'll probably last longer than if it's something that you're actively using all the time. And each one has their own general guidelines for how long they're good for. So a USB drive like this one, or a flash drive, thumb drive, whatever you want to call it, memory stick, Usually they say they last about 5 to 10 years. There's no definitive answer how long they last. Like I said, how much you use them, how they're stored, all affects it. But about 5 to 10 years before you should start to worry that the hard drive itself will fail. So if you have some of these old USB drives, consider getting new USB drives or a new external drive and transferring your data over to a new one every 5 to 10 years, if the data is of that like important enough to you. That's the nice thing about cloud storage. It never degrades. So that's another nice thing about storing digital files in the cloud. Hard drives. So either on your computer or an external hard drive. These last about 3 to 5 years. They have a lot more moving parts in them and they're more complex inside. So while the whole drive might not fail in 3 to 5 years, usually between 3 and 5 years, one component fails at least on any of these types of things. So what you want to do, make sure that you have really good backups, right? And think about if it's an external drive, think about replacing it every 3 to 5 years. If it's your computer, again, just make sure that you've got a really good backup. You don't want to have to replace that every 3 to 5 years. That's expensive. CDs and DVDs. If you've recorded on them, then they usually only last for about 2 to 5 years before you can start to worry about losing information on them. So if you have information stored on old CDs and DVDs that you've not used in a while, transfer those as soon as you can. Plus, it's getting harder and harder to find hardware to play them because a lot of the computers these days are coming without the CD and DVD drives. So if you've never used the CD or DVD, then it'll last about 5 to 10 years. But some manufacturers say that they last 10 to 20 years. Again, it all depends on how much you used it, depends on how you're storing it. These are very sensitive though. They're not as protected. So if you want to be super safe, 2 to 5 years, and then put it on, move it to a new device. Floppy disks actually were great. They could last 10 to 20 years. They didn't store much data, although back then we thought they did, but about 10 to 20 years before you had to worry about floppy disks starting to fail. So some of those older floppies, you might still be able to have somebody pull the information off for you. And of course, when you're storing any of these, remember, avoid direct sunlight, extreme heat, extreme cold, dust, moisture, pests, all of that type of thing. So be careful about what environment you're storing these in. You don't have to be as careful as you would with photos, but along those lines, just try to make sure to keep them safe from extreme elements. So, all right, before we go into how to find your files again, we'll touch on this just really quickly. That webinar tonight, again, we go much more in depth into recording your decisions, how to find your files, how to organize your files, all of that. There's simply not time in a Thursday talk to go that in depth. But we will talk about that really quickly. Did want to say what the comments said. So Jana says, oh, yes, if you are using digital file storage, which we talk about in the paper path as well, in the paper path course, as well as the webinar, just because you scan things does not mean that everything you should get rid of. So Jana says, but don't get rid of official documents like birth certificates, marriage license, etc. Yes, if there's something that you should keep the original, such as your birth certificate, marriage license, any type of thing like that, then make sure to still keep the original and a scan. The scan can be your backup of the original because with your papers, if something were to happen and there was a fire, then a digital copy is your backup for your papers. So that's a good thing to point out. Thank you, because I did not mention that. Hey, Judy, welcome. Glad that you're here. Susan says, paper will always be current. Laugh out loud. No plug-in necessary. That is very true. That is one of the nice things. The digital copy could be just your backup. And if you have the paper file, then that could be the backup for your digital as well. So paper does not degrade as quickly. And yeah, the biggest thing is there is damage and loss from fire, water damage, things like that, pests. Lori says, fun tip, old CDs and DVDs make great mirrored party decorations when hung with the ceiling with fishing line. Okay, that's really cute. That's funny. So yeah, if you have old CDs and DVDs, throw a party, use them as decoration. Thank you for sharing. Sue says, I'm fearful that I may lose my data and will have gotten rid of the paper files. And that's okay. You know, sometimes just use the digital files as a backup for your paper if you want. And then over time, once you begin to trust digital and you feel more familiar with it, you've had more experience, then if you wanted to, you can start to let go of select papers. Maybe start with the ones that if something happened, it would be not the end of the world, and then move up from there. So just dip your toe in. But I'd say start scanning and trying it out and testing the whole digital file storage so you can start to become more comfortable and really figure out the ins and outs of it. That's going to be a great backup to your papers in case there was a fire or any type of damage, and that might give you a little bit of extra comfort level. So valid fear, but not overcomable. Peg says, when I moved, I bought a DVD with my medical records from my general practitioner, but the new doctor's office didn't have any computers with a DVD drive. Yeah, technology's changed so fast, and sometimes you might have to find a service that can change it over for you. Or if you have a whole lot of them, check Amazon. A lot of times you can find these external DVD drives, things like that you can use really quickly or borrow from a friend. But technology changes so fast. Now the cloud is the one thing that seems to not be changing as quickly. Linda says some documents can be put on file with the county records department, such as military DD-214s, power of attorney, etc. It can, and that's a great backup as well. So if you have that ability with your county, that's a fantastic way to have an extra backup. Do still try to have the original and a digital copy so that you can get your hands on it really quickly, though, if you need it. Absolutely. Good one. I love your comments. You guys are so smart. All right, so number 4, this is the last one that we're going to talk about really quickly, is recording your decisions. So one of our biggest fears, you all mentioned it a whole lot, it was my biggest fear, is being afraid that you won't be able to find your digital files again once they're scanned. Because unlike a piece of paper, you can't physically see it. So it can be a little bit more difficult to visualize where this digital file is. And there are some ways to make this more comfortable. And that is by recording your decisions. So what I mean by recording your decisions is if you are a member of the Paper Path course, not a member, but an owner of the Paper Path course, then you already have the paper policy and you're probably familiar with that, where you've written down what types of papers will be stored in which type of file folder, in which file location, and how long you're going to keep it. That's your paper policy. You can have the same type of policy for digital files. And there are several types of policies and worksheets and spreadsheets that I recommend setting up if you are working with digital files and want that extra sense of security. So if you are the type, now I will say, if you're the personality type who loves details and loves to set things like this up and maintain them, this is for you. If you are my inventor, organizing personality types, my more creatives, the ones that do not like the details and the maintenance as much, then a very simplified version of this is great for you. Don't make it super complex and don't try to record everything. Just go more general because, my administrator types are much more better with some of these policies. Just wanted to say that with my creatives, then having great file names that are searchable, that's going to be your best bet. So when you're recording your decisions, one of the things that you'll, in the webinar tonight, is I will have a digital file policy template that I will share. That it is going to be a fillable PDF if you wanted to use it. But a digital file policy, this is a great place to write down where you've decided to store specific types of files. So for example, you would write down the device or cloud service like Google Drive. So in Google Drive, I will store these types of files. I will store my backup of my photos. I will store my craft and hobby ideas. And then maybe my pink USB drive. Well, my pink USB drive, I will store my financial files, my medical files, career, insurances, assets. So you can write down the drive, like the location that you're going to store it and what types. So that way you don't have to try to remember, okay, which USB drive is it on? Did I store it in Google Drive or Dropbox, or which Google Drive account did I store it in? So having a digital file storage policy will help you remember what types of files are stored on what type of device or cloud storage. Now, another thing, just like the paper policy, you may want to write out, on Google Drive, this is my folder structure. I've decided that I'm going to store my bank statements in the, Suzanna financial bank statements folder. So writing down where you've decided to store it, just like the paper policy. You can use your paper policy for all of my Paper Path course people. You can use your paper policy for digital files. Use that same one and just enter digital file information instead of paper file information. Another thing, whether you're the creative type or you are the administrative type, write down how you plan to name your digital files. We go into naming much more in depth in the webinar, but making sure to create file names that are very searchable by the keywords, that is huge. It makes it so much easier to find the files that you need. If you can be consistent, then it's going to make the organization of your files so much nicer if you're using all the different file folders. So writing down how you've decided to structure your file names can make sure that you're going to be consistent. And then finally have a plan, and I like to write this out too, have a plan of your digital backups. So that would include my USB drive every, once a month, I will plug in my USB drive and I will copy all of those files over to my larger external drive with all the backups. And then on, right now, if it was 2022, I'd be like, okay, well, in June 2024, I will replace the pink backup drive with a new one to make sure that it stays good. So you can write these types of things down so you can make sure that you remember your backups. Using automated backups is really, really helpful. So anything that you can automate the backups, but with things like USB drives that you have to physically plug in, those you will probably have to remember on your own. So having a backup and protection plan, that will really help you. All right, really quickly then, that's it. I will do a recap in just a minute. Tell me in the comments though, what was interesting today for you? Did you have any aha moments? What are you going to try from what we talked about today? I would love to hear that for you. And then Kathleen says, what if you want to store all of your info on the main backup drive? Can you tell me what you mean by main backup drive? Are you talking about on your main computer, or are you talking about one large external drive? If you could just clarify, I would love to answer that for you. Susan says, you can also get a fine Sharpie and write on the USB thumb drive the year and a short description. You can, and actually I have on my external drive even Post-it tape that you can get from Amazon. If you check out the store, I have my favorite things link. You can find out exactly what this is. But this is just my Post-it tape, and I put this on all of my external drives and on my USB drives usually. So that's one way. The hard part is then you have to actually find the drives and look at the labels to see what's on there, and you can't necessarily see all the categories on a smaller label. So having the label on the drive, really helpful. I would do that because it's a great suggestion, as well as the digital file policy. So I would do both of those together. So thank you. Very good tip. Love, love, love that. So Kathleen says, just a large external drive. You know what? There's nothing wrong with having all of your files on one. Absolutely okay. That makes it even easier. And I know for me, some things I like access to while I'm traveling or from any device, and some things I want to keep super secure. Some things I just like to have separated mentally. I like my photos separate from my work stuff. So it all depends on what works for you. If you want them all on one drive, that's fantastic. Absolutely, though, make sure to have a really good backup. If that's your only drive with all of your files, you might even want 2 backups, just because if that one thing fails, then you lose it all, and that would be heartbreaking. But I support it. I think having them all in one is great. Suzanne says, how long will the webinar be available? So the webinar, if you wanted to join me live, it's tonight. So you would have to register before 6 p.m. to join me live. As far as purchasing the webinar after it's live, you will be able to purchase it at suzannakaye.com and click the store link. For an extra $5, you can purchase the replay, I think for 1 month. If you do purchase the replay after the webinar, no matter how you registered, you will get a replay that you can keep forever. You can download it, it's yours. So if you do register for the webinar, then you get it forever. Just download, it'll have like the replay page with the download and instructions. Yeah, Jane says that she was not aware that USB drives needed to be replaced. Yes, most people don't know that. They seem like they would last forever, but they absolutely do need to be replaced. Now, it does not mean that in 2 to 5 years, it's definitely going to fail, but it means it's more likely that more and more of them start to fail after 2 to 5 years. Denise says, realizing how much I do not know about cloud and Google Drive storage. Yeah, good. I'm glad that you learned some things with that. That's awesome. Love that. Perfect. All right, so let's just recap really quickly. The types of digital storage. So the types of digital storage are the local drives, which are the physical ones at your location that you manage, or there's cloud, which means that it's stored over the internet on a different server run by a third party. Now, I'm sorry. Shh. All right, sorry about that. Puppy's feeling better too. The cloud storage versus local. So pros and cons with that. Cloud storage requires the internet connection, which means that you do open yourself up more to the possibility of hackers. It's not something that you need to lose sleep over, but it's something you should be aware of. It also means that it's stored on another party's servers. So you do not have control of the servers, but remember they do have redundancy. So they have copies of your things on multiple locations. So if something happened in one, then you still will not lose any data. You can also access it from multiple devices. So you could be traveling, you could be on your phone and access it, or your computer. While local hard drives, you can only access it from the device it's plugged into, and it's much more likely to have damage, crash. You could have data loss because it's just one piece of hardware. There's no redundancy unless you have a really good backup plan. The nice thing is it's not connected to the internet. And if you plug it in and unplug the internet, you're even more secure. So that's one of the handy things about the local. We talked about degrading technology, the fact that over time, hardware changes. So now a lot of our computers don't even have a CD or DVD drive. So that makes it very difficult to get the data off of old types. So keeping up with that is difficult. Also, over time, your tech degrades. So USB is 5 to 10 years. Hard drives that are in your computer or external are about 3 to 5 years. CDs and DVDs, 2 to 5 years if you've recorded on them. Floppy disks, 10 to 20 years. The more you use it, the faster it's going to degrade. And remember to avoid extreme heat, cold, moisture, all of those different types of environmental things when you're storing them. And then we talked about recording your decisions. So some of the things that will really help you make sure that you can find your files again. If you're a creative thinking type like me and you're more towards the inventor side of the organizing personalities, your file naming policy is going to be huge for you, because finding things through the search function is going to be easiest for you. So my creatives, really focus on your file naming policy and try to be consistent with how you name your files, and it's going to make everything so easy for you. For my administrator types and my more detailed types, the filing naming policy is awesome. Also, make sure to write down what different storage locations you're using for different categories of files, what your filing structure is, and just like the paper policy, what type of document, how long do you plan to store it for, when will you purge it, all of that good stuff. And then make sure you have a plan to back these things up. So backing them up, making sure that you know when to replace them, because you've had them for a while. All of that's going to help just make it easier for you to protect your data. And if you wanted to go much more in depth with your email and digital file storage, then tonight is the webinar, 6 p.m. Eastern time. There's a replay available. If you register and can't make it live, that's okay. You get a replay afterwards. It's available forever because you can download it. So make sure to register by going to suzannakaye.com, going to the store link. During the webinar, some of the main topics we will cover, I'm going to talk about email settings. Some various email settings you might not even know about that will make your inbox so much easier to manage. We're going to talk about how to manage your email inbox using folders, stars, and several other tools to help you manage all of those emails and not miss anything important or lose any of those emails. we're going to talk about digital storage foundations. So we will go much more in depth into some areas that we could not cover today in depth. And you'll really understand digital storage better. And we will talk about organizing and protecting your digital files. So talk about filing structures, the folders, file naming, how to name your files for search really well, and talking a bit about how to protect those files. So hopefully I see you tonight at the webinar live, or at least in the replay afterwards. So stop by the store link if you wanted to join me. This is a brand new webinar. Never done this one before with you guys. So it's a fun one. All right, so really quickly, in the comments, Lori says, when my twins hit high school and college, we used a family spreadsheet accessible online by all three of us with all of their accounts, usernames, passwords, emails used, last update, lifesaver. Yes, that's one of the great things with these digital files. You can share them between family members. We have some shared folders with my husband and myself and my stepdaughter that help so much. Lori says it started with online access to public library accounts, video games, school email, then college applications, SAT accounts, FAFSA, scholarship, college-specific accounts. You can all be on the same page and they update. So when you change a file through the cloud storage, then their copy of it, well, it's not even their copy. They're using the same copy. So they get to see the changes. As long as they did not make a separate copy, they'll see those changes, sometimes even live as you're doing it. So you can be on the phone and working together on it through things like Google Drive. So that's awesome. Love, love, love that, Lori. Kathleen says, see you tonight at the webinar. That's awesome. Yay, I'm so glad. Well, thank you all so much. Hopefully you enjoyed this. This, like I said, is part 1 of 5 parts for our where to store things section of the Organizing Decision-Making series. So some of the other parts that you can look forward to coming up in the next few weeks, we will be talking about creating storage criteria and questions to ask. So kind of making decisions on where to store some of your items with criteria and questions. We'll be talking about, I'll do a session on finding unique and wasted space. So some really fun ways to find unique and wasted space around. I think I'll be doing that one next week, I believe. We'll be talking about zones, using the zones concept to help organize the things in your home. And we'll be talking about property law. So how to use the concept of organizing property law in order to decide where to store things in your home. So hopefully that will help you out. Dorothy says, how long is the webinar? The webinar is about an hour. We might go a little bit over because I did add in some bonus content since I had to delay the webinar 1 week from being sick. I added on some extra downloads that will be shared with my Pathfinders. If you're a Pathfinder, then I will, in the coming weeks, be sharing the digital file policy with you. But I added on extra downloads and I did add on some extra content. I'm trying to keep it within an hour. The nice thing is if I do have to go over an hour and you're live with me, you will get the replay afterwards and can see anything that you miss. Patsy says, enjoy listening. Awesome. Oh, I enjoy having you here. All right. Well, I love you so much. Go register for the webinar because it's going to be a really, really, really good one. I'm super excited about this one. So go to suzannakaye.com and then click on the store link and then you can join me there. If you are a Pathfinder member, make sure instead of going through the store link, log into your online library and then go to the discounts tab because you get $5 off. So as long as you purchase it before it's live tonight at 6 p.m., you will get the $5 off. Once it goes live, then there's no member discount. But yeah, I love to make sure that my members get extra special discounts and extra downloads and all that good stuff. So if you wanted to become a Pathfinder and join the membership, in the description of this video, there's a link to become a Pathfinder. But most important, I want to see you at the webinar tonight or during the replay. Let's see in the chat. Well, okay, we'll ignore that one. Facebook says, where or when is this Thursday talk available for replay? Great question. Oops, sorry, just blocking a user from some seriously strange comments. Okay. So this Thursday talk is available for replay. If you are a Pathfinder member, then you will have it for the next 6 months at least in your online library. It will be uploaded in about an hour, hour and a half. It'll be uploaded to your online library in the event replays. If you are not a Pathfinder member, then you will have access to it for at least the next 30 days on the YouTube channel. So when you go to my YouTube channel, then you can find there's a playlist for Thursday Talks. And coming up soon, those public Thursday Talks will start to be limited to 30 days, like the past 30 days available. So if you've not seen any of the past Thursday Talks and you want to see them before they disappear for the public, make sure to head over to the YouTube playlist and view them right there. Yeah, because they eventually, within the next few months, it'll be only 30 days access back, and then the members will have longer access. So hopefully that helps. Dorinda says, darn, too late to save $5. It's not too late to save $5, actually. Hopefully that's not on the store link. It should be in the store link. But if you're a Pathfinder member, remember, if you log into your online library and click discounts, then you should see that it's $5 off. Should only be $20 instead of $25. In the online store, it'll be $25 until 6 p.m. tonight. Then it will be $30 for just the replay after that. And if there's anything there that's incorrect and you don't see that pricing, shoot me an email at hello@suzannakaye.com and let me know, and I will make sure to honor the pricing for you. Since I've been sick and it was delayed a week, it is possible that I did not see something in time. Oh, Dorinda, you didn't log in right, so you paid $25. That's not a problem. Shoot me an email at hello@suzannakaye.com. Let me know what email address your Pathfinder membership is under, and we will refund you $5. Never a problem. If you're a Pathfinder, we always want to honor that for you. Hopefully that helps. Awesome. Well, thank you. Dorinda, shoot me that email to get your $5 refund for being a member. And I look forward to seeing you tonight, next week, if not tonight, if you don't get to join me for the webinar. I'm so glad. And Lori says, thank you. Excited about this series about where to store things. Yes. Yay. I am too. I'm super excited. I love you all so much. Make today amazing. Pathfinders, I will see you in about 5 minutes over in the Campfire group on Facebook for your special live, where we'll go a little bit more in depth into some of these things. Kathleen says, didn't you say the cost is $5 off if you pay before 6? Yes. So if you're a member and you pay before 6 through the link in your online library, it's $20. If you're not a member and you pay before 6 through the online store, suzannakaye.com, and click on store, it's $25. After 6 p.m., it will be $30 for everyone. And it's just the replay. You can't join live then. It's $30 for everybody. So Pathfinders save $10 if you register before 6. Non-members save $5 through the store link if you register before 6. Hopefully that makes it clear. Yes, $5. So the store pricing, the $25, is the price for before 6 p.m. After 6 p.m., the store will actually change and it'll say $30. So very good. Thank you so much. I love you. Make today amazing. I love you, beautiful. See you, Pathfinders, in a couple minutes.